Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of To The Point with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajya Sabha television. The union government decided not to re-promulgate the land ordinance and instead let it lapse. The principal opposition party, the Congress, immediately said that it was a setback for the government and claimed victory over it. To find out what the government's take on the entire matter is, I have with me the Rural Development Minister of the Union Cabinet, Mr. Chaudhry Birender Singh. Mr. Singh, welcome to Rajya Sabha television. Thank you for joining me. What was the decision to let the land ordinance lapse?
The amendment which we were seeking in the 2013 Act was based on the recommendation of all the states and all the stakeholders. And it was with this purpose that in the present Act, the procedure for acquisition is a delaying sort of procedure. And every state wanted that if it is speeded up, then we would be in a position to make full use of the Act itself, because certain things you cannot remain uncertain on certain things. If you are to take out a canal, if there is some highways to be constructed, if some dam is to be constructed for the village or a particular area, then if the procedure is laid down and it will take 59 months, at least 59 months, then the very purpose is defeated. So that was the intention. But because of certain political, angle of political parties, and it's not that they were opposing on the principles of the bill, but they thought that this is the only constituency of any political party which is biggest in the size. If you talk of farming community, or if you talk of rural India, that means still 68% people are living there. And they wanted to make use of the situation so that they can have the sympathy or the attraction for that political outfit.
In doing so, the principal opposition party, the Congress, made the BJP look like it is anti-farmer. And they also called it a setback for the BJP going back to the 2013 Act. Would you agree with that?
No. These are two different things. Setback, if you call it setback, I will explain it separately. But why they were doing it, that is what I have explained. And this is, when the matter was referred to subcommittee of Parliament, that means we were thinking that subcommittee is in a way mini parliament, and something would come out. There would be consensus on the amendments which we were seeking in the parliament, and we were confident that in the interest of the country, when you talk of the interest of the farmer, that doesn't mean that the country's interest is not there. And when country's interest is there, that means the farmer interest is to be protected by all means. So we wanted an act which can give speed to the acquisition process, and also to see that the compensation, rehabilitation and resettlement of the uprooted landowners should be in that way. They should feel satisfied. And it is whatever we incorporated in our amendments, these things were kept in mind. But subcommittee of Parliament, they got 3 extensions, and ultimately the 3rd extension was to seek extension till the next session of Parliament. So in the interest of the farmers, ultimately we decided to do away with the promulgation of the another ordinance. Rather, we decided that the 13 central acts, which were not made part of the original act, I don't know whether it was mistake on the part of those who are framing the legislation or they deliberately did it, but all the 13 acts regarding acquisition of land for railway, for national highways, and also for coal mines, minerals, and ports. These were the 13 legislation.
Will these 13 central acts now be completely bound by all the sections of the 2013 Act?
That is very simple. If you go through the act, why these acts were kept out, I don't understand. But I still believe that these three provisions, which you can say, which is already provided in the act itself, but not applicable to these 13 central acts.
Yes.
These would be provided in the act. I mean, it will become part of the act. So naturally, they are also covered under the act.
Was the decision to let the land ordinance lapse, land ordinance, was it taken with an eye on the Bihar elections?
Yes, no, that is, our concern was because, I come from Congress background, and when I left the party, I was member of the Congress Working Committee, which is the highest policy-making body. And sitting there, I was also of this opinion that the legislation of 2013 was done in a haste. And why? Because we were of the opinion that if this legislation is there, then we may get the support of the farming community to a great extent, and it will boost our election prospects. But party never realized, because of their acts of omission and commission in the last 10 years, they lost that credibility, and even this legislation could not give a single additional vote to our party.
But the party now claims to have regained that credibility by being by the side of the farmers for the last 1 year or so.
That is what I am saying. This is not the siding with the farmers. A party which lost the credibility, it came down from 206 to 44. That is in the beginning, which I told you, they wanted to make capital out of this by opposing this legislation to regain that thing. But that is not that easy. I am in politics for the last 4 decades. I know things are very difficult. When you lose certain things, you can't expect that everything would be returned. That is impossible. But Congress did it deliberately, and in the politics or in parliamentary democracy, number game is also very important.
Yes, it is.
And in Rajya Sabha, we were not in a position to have that number. But we were holding this view that this legislation is must for the country. And if country is to go ahead, I don't understand, when we were discussing this act in Lok Sabha, members from opposition benches, I can pinpoint certain parties also. The party that is BJD of Odisha, party TMC, and some of the members even in Congress party, when they were discussing, deliberating upon this, they made very relevant comments on 2-3 things. One, they said that in this country, about 20 crore youth, young girls and boys, those who are in the profession of agriculture, if they continue to be there, their future is not bright, because with this involving of more than 60% of the hands still in.
Interesting that you brought this up. So what happens now to the reforms agenda? Without land acquisition, industrialization also takes a beating. So what happens now?
That is what I am saying, that this is how I would say that Congress, especially in other opposition parties also, they are saying that we have taken a U-turn or we have surrendered. This is not. Rather, when we initiated this amendment bill, it was on the recommendation of the Congress ruled states. It was on the recommendation of certain regional party ruled states. It was on the recommendation of the BJP ruled states that they said that if this present form of legislation continues, then we may not be able to acquire even a single acre of land. Please ensure that the procedure is simplified and it should be made in such a way that there can be a speeding procedure for the acquisition of the land. So why they were saying? Because that time they were in power in Maharashtra, in Haryana, in Kerala and in Assam, and these were the Congress ruled states. They were of this opinion. When they lost power there in some of these states, then they said, we are for the farmers, we will not allow this to happen, this is anti-farmer. So, blowing hot and cold in the same breath, this is how the Congress culture is. So, what I say is that is...
Would you at least concede, Mr. Singh, that, there is definitely going to be a slowdown in industrialization because now we've regressed?
That is to be seen now, because I still understand that the legislation which we brought, it is with the Joint Committee of Parliament, and if something or some good sense prevails with these people, or if something good comes out of their recommendation, everything is not, it is not the end of the matter.
So until then, is the onus now on the states then?
That is another thing. That is what I explained to you only a minute before.
Yes.
When the states were objecting and they were making this argument that the consent clause, if it continues with in this legislation, then we may not be able to acquire land because 70-80% consent may not be possible. But now when they are out of power, they said this is the basic and this is the fundamental right of the farmers that the acquisition proceeding must first get the consent of the farmer. So this is how the double face of the so-called parties which are arguing against this legislation. Now, states are at liberty to pass their legislation according to the circumstances of their own state.
Yes.
And if they are still of this opinion that consent should be there, it should not be taken out, let them continue with this. And if they come out with this legislation that we do away with the consent clause, then they would be totally exposed. And exposed in that sense which you are saying. They are the responsible, those who hold the procedure of industrialization which is the need of the hour and which should be speeded up. So they would be held responsible for that. And I would show you in the future, because this is a concurrent list subject. States are at liberty to have their own legislation, but if some of the provisions are repugnant to the Central Act, then they may not get the nod of the Rashtrapati ji.
Indeed.
So these are the legalities also. But let us see how they think of now the present act. That is why I am saying that the state which are of this view that let there be an amendment in the present act, and later on they started opposing it, they would be exposed.
Indeed. Indeed. On that note, we'll slip into a short break, but on the other side, we'll find out from the Minister what happens to the NDA's land bill. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television in conversation with the Rural Development Minister, Mr. Chaudhary Birender Singh. Mr. Singh, thank you for staying with us. So what happens to the NDA's land bill now? Are we going to see a comeback of the land bill maybe in the near future?
That is what I was explaining, that some of the political outfits sitting in the opposition, they were pleading that 20 crore youngsters aligned with agriculture, they don't see their future in agriculture. And it is the need of the hour that they should be taken out of that and given some new assignment, new ventures, new opportunities. And this is only possible when you have a infrastructure, where you have the job opportunities, where you can come up in life, where you learning skill, developing skill, you can join those ventures, and then you start a new life. You see one thing, when we got independence, the share of agriculture was more than 50% of the national GDP. Now it has come down to less than 13%, less than 14%, 13 point something. And on the other hand, हम जब स्कूल में पढ़ते थे कहते थे 85% इस देश की जनसंख्या खेती बाड़ी पे निर्भर है, खेती बाड़ी करती है. Now that 85% has come down only to 68%. On one hand, still 68% of the hands are involved in agriculture, and on the other hand, you have come down as far as state national GDP is concerned to 13.6.
Yes.
So this is the very, a grim picture which should be realized in the national perspective, not to seek our political gains out of this act. That is why I still feel that the committee, joint committee of parliament would come out with certain suggestions, and if those suggestions are in the interest of the farmers and in the interest of the nation to have a speedier development, then we would certainly go for the legislation where the anomalies of the present act can be removed.
We've seen a trend of sorts in Parliament, especially in the Rajya Sabha over the last 1 year. The Congress, the principal opposition party, is opposing everything or every reform or every legislation that the government is bringing to the table. So this is something that you're used to. So are you going to change your strategy going forward?
It is two-pronged strategy if somebody is to follow it. One is on the national scene, even your television, your channel, and there are other channels also. If their main concern is to see that certain weaknesses are developing in our parliamentary democracy, then we must make it clear to the nation that in parliamentary democracy, you are to come up to a level where your own interest or the interest of your political parties are secondary and the national interest are the prime interest. Then this is one thing where you can give a message to the nation. On the other hand, I am very sure and I am very positive that even the political outfits would also see some light that the country cannot tolerate this kind of impasse, this kind of stalemate in the parliament. And the most important thing which comes to my mind is things would get more clear and things would improve in the time. We are in a transitory period of parliamentary democracy to be matured. So these are the hiccups. I don't believe that these are the permanent features with the parliamentary democracy. These are the hiccups, and I'm very much hopeful. Ultimate realization would be how we are to protect our national interest, how we can come up in the international committee as a front runner country in the world as far as the economy of the country is concerned, as far as our stature we are a civilization of which we claim 5,000, 10,000 years old civilization. So we are to give, or rather we are to reflect our par of that civilization to the other parts of the world. I am very much hopeful of that.
Talking about the economy, the GST bill hangs in the balance, the Constitution Amendment Bill. You see, is there any kind of back channel talks to try and ensure that the Congress comes on board so that the GST is passed, so that the dream of the government that it be realized in April 2016 be realized?
If a standing committee has already, submitted its reports, that means Congress was one of the player, and their representation in the standing committee is larger as far as their strength is concerned. So, if that report and on that basis we are moving for the passing of the GST, then I don't think why Congress is still opposing it. Only to oppose something, you will be incurring the wrath of the people. Now people understands everything, and I'm very much attached to the ground. I know this country is not no more that you can still have two faces, one on the field and other in the parliament. So there is a realization, even in the Congress ranks, that when that legislation which was introduced by Congress in UPA government, and the same legislation is now the need of the hour, and it is to be passed. Why it is to be opposed now? On which argument? On what grounds? So nation knows, and this must be a realization with the Congress also, and I am hopeful that GST would be through.
So is there going to be a special session soon to pass the...
I don't think there is a need for any special session, but we have already committed that it should be made functional from the 1st of April 2016. So in that case, if there is a need, then it can be thought over.
Or else you're going to wait till the winter session then?
No, that is what I am saying. It can be thought over, but winter session is not far off. Winter session is not too far off.
Okay, let's shift focus now and talk about the Bihar elections, because we've seen a feverish pitch and we've seen some barbs and counter barbs being made in Bihar. So you've decided not to go with a chief ministerial candidate or a face there for a chief minister in Bihar. Was that a well thought out strategy after what happened in Delhi?
This is always there. I've been in Congress for 40 years and I still can say, and I've been in charge of 7 states, and I conducted election in 7 states as the General Secretary in charge of the Congress party, and all in the 7 states there was no chief ministerial candidate. But where you are already ruling, then of course this is the perception or this is the belief of the people that the man who is already leading, he may be leading in the next term. So we as a party, we were not in power in Bihar, and there is no need to go with this that here is a chief minister candidate. I don't believe. This is my personal experience, because I have been contender for the chief ministership not now, for the last 15-20 years.
Yes.
And this is the pleading on the basis of my experience, that if there are a dozen candidates for chief ministership, they would make sure that at least the people near to them in the political system, they must get through. So they will make best efforts to see that they must get through. So this is in the advantage of a political party, and if my experience, can speak something, then that I will certainly say there is no need for chief ministerial candidate.
But are you worried? Is the BJP worried at some point because of the Mahagathbandhan that is formed there in Bihar? Is it something that concerns you at all?
Political equation are not a permanent feature for any political party or political system. And if this Gathbandhan is there for their political vested interests, because A man who is in power, it's a matter of his survival. And the man who has lost power completely, he wants to remain important in political system of Bihar. And the third outfit is, which has already lost its base in Bihar. They want, at least through this, some base to be created. So these three interested parties are known fact with the electorate also. So sometime there may be a wave that I can't rule out, but when there is no such thing, then this kind of combination would never work.
Mr. Singh, we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of the interview. Thank you so much for joining us, and it was a pleasure having you on Rajya Sabha television. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time. Bye-bye.